say it's a great honor and privilege to serve as the moderator of this event. We have a panel that includes many talented and amazing individuals, and I'm humbled to be in your presence. I would like to take a moment to invite Ronnie and Elliot up here to talk a little bit about the Pride movement and the program for this evening.
Hi. Hey guys, how are you? Hey.
So no one wants to come closer?
Yeah, please come closer. Would you mind?
Which side is the bride and which side is the groom?
I want to fill this out.
My name's Elliot. I'll wait for you guys.
Come on up, y'all. We want to get up close and intimate with you guys.
And I'm going to be quick, I'll let Ronnie. But pretty much Ronnie and I are both from Chicago. I'm from Rockford. Do not judge. Growing up in Rockford I grew up in Chesney Park, which is even smaller. It was a little tedious in the late 90s. I don't know what to say. I mean, bullying really affected my life. And I always ask people, what in your adulthood, what are your quirks in your adulthood? And people really think about it. And there's actually, everyone has these tics. And for me, it's busness. When I was like 14, I was on a school bus. And you know these school buses, they're like green and dark brown. I mean, they're really scary inside with these really tall seats. And I just remember, like, I was always petrified because this kid named Sean Thompson would get on the bus. He could strike that. And he would make my life hell. And I would always just cringe. And one day, riding the bus home, I hear him calling my name. And I'm like wondering, wow, is this like the moment he's actually like acknowledging my existence as a person? And like the seats are so high, and I take that chance and I crawl up the seat and I look, and there's Sean looking right at me, and he calls me, he's like, "You're such a faggot." Then he spits in my face in front of everybody. And I was mortified. I didn't know what to do. Like I was so I just couldn't process it. I was too young to understand. And I got off that bus and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't talk to my parents because my parents would be like, "Well, what's wrong? What's going on? Why is this happening?" I couldn't talk to the teachers because I felt like they, at that time, didn't really know how to facilitate this. So that is why I hate buses. You will never see me get on a bus. But what I'm really happy right now is that we finally are talking about this. Like, it's not, it's real. It's really real. And one mission for Ronnie and I is that, we don't really want to focus on victims. We want to focus on how we can be better people. And we feel like with self-confidence and empowerment and learning to be better friends, that you can handle these situations better. And that's one of our main goals. Because I feel like in high school, I want you to think about who are your friends right now, and would you be friends with them in high school? Probably not, because it's a whole eclectic group we all have. And if we could teach these teens that it's okay to be different, and you can find that common thread, that you guys can have amazing friendships. So I'm going to wrap this up with one last message. By the way, I'm dying right now. I had an interview yesterday, and they said, "What are you looking forward to on the walk?" And I said, "The biggest challenge I have to overcome," and I have the flu right now. And tomorrow I start walking. I just want to quickly say this. It's very important that our campaign goes viral. We are 50% funded. We do not want to run out halfway along the walk. And Ronnie and I designed this awesome purple watch. And our idea was that we want people to feel involved. So for $20 on Indiegogo, you get this watch. But on top of that, it's even more personal. You get this awesome purple ribbon that we want you to personalize. The envelope is already self-stamped and addressed, and you pop it in the mail, and it goes to the Tyler Clementi Foundation, where we're going to hang them up in New York. So please, 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 if you have a moment, please buy a watch tonight. Buy 2, buy 5, buy 100, whatever you want. And please also spread this campaign, because we want to see it go viral. We want to see this everywhere. So thank you so much for taking time to be here on Friday night.
And if I might add, Elliot and myself met just a little over a year ago, and we've built Friend Movement up from the ground, thanks to the help of our friends and our family. But we're artists, and we're innovators, and we like to tell people's stories. And that's why, for those of you in the room that may not know this, we are embarking upon a 921-mile journey, starting tomorrow from the Chicago Bean and walking all the way to New York City over the course of 37 days. And the idea behind Friend Movement, it's really simple. The opposite of bullying is friendship. And if we can be a better friend to ourselves, if we can look in the mirror and say, I love you, you walk through life with confidence. You're not a target of bullying. And if it happens, you're less likely to let it depress you to the point of, unfortunately, where Tyler has taken his life. So we're dedicating this walk to Tyler and his memory, celebrating his life. And it's important to us to keep this conversation going. So tonight you guys are here, and we're so thankful for you to take your time out of your busy schedules to join us for this conversation. And this is truly only the beginning. So thank you. And please give a round of applause to Deb Abbott in the back.
Yay, Debbie.
They were part of the planning committee and helped actually put together this entire panel tonight. Who's looking at our asses? So without further ado, please put your hands together for this incredible panel.
And I'd also like to say thank you to Ronnie and Elliot for organizing this very meaningful and much needed event. So I'd also like you to join me in a round of applause for Ronnie and Elliot.
I'll be sleeping in the back of these.
Before I get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with a master's degree in clinical social work from the University of Chicago. I co-authored my first book in 2012 titled Diversity and Social Justice in a Changing United States, in which Ronnie Kroell is featured, and topics related to the LGBT community are highlighted in the book. I feel incredibly grateful to be able to moderate this panel this evening because I've seen firsthand the negative effects that bullying of members of the LGBT community has, and I'm hoping that each and every one of you will help us in solving the problem this evening. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about your backgrounds, and what motivated each of you to participate in the panel this evening. Starting with you.
Okay. My name is Richard Pryor, Jr. I'm an actor, singer, and activist. The reason why I'm here is because I've been bullied on a lot of levels. I'll put it this way: black bullying, gay bullying, and celebrity bullying. I've had it all. So I've really been through the gamut. I have been through things with suicide attempts. I've actually died twice. I've been through it all because of words and how words affect people. And being able to come out of it and being able to share with people or read someone who's younger who thinks that they have no way out and no one to talk to, nowhere to go, especially in my community, the African American community, because a lot of things are so hush-hush in that community. And to be able to be a voice for people and let them know that there's a way out. And that we always hear that things do get better, but things actually do get better. If you have the resources and friends, people that actually care for you, and are actually there for you, that will stand up for you. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Melba Rodriguez. I am, I think I said this, I am a Latina, a lesbian, Episcopalian, and a vice president for institutional advancement at Northeastern Illinois University. I've had to overcome, oh, you're Hispanic, must not be able to speak English. I've had to overcome, you're a lesbian, you're a dyke, probably, yes I am. And I've had to overcome bullying in so many different ways because it takes many forms. It isn't just because I'm queer that I get bullied. And as I was listening to you, Richard, and to others, the power dynamics around bullying is really, if you really think about it, almost frightening. Someone is putting someone down for the purpose of feeling bigger and better. And that is really sad. But the other piece of it is, as a very middle-aged lesbian who was married in the state of Iowa, and hopefully the state of Illinois will get its act together, I've seen so much change in my community, and that I can dwell in the possibility that when I'm 60 years old, my wife and I are going to be able to go anywhere we want and will be legally recognized. Lots has changed. But I think that I die every time I hear a young person has killed himself or herself that has to stop. So back to my vice president self. That has to stop. And I was 14 and queer, and I had friends like Debbie who didn't know she was an ally, but she was. So we need to do something about this.
So my name's Joe Serio. I'm a therapist, a counselor, and a director of the mental health program for children and adolescents out in the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs, growing up gay in the suburbs. You certainly experience your share of bullying. And you know, I went to a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and I don't want to bash anyone or people, but that was less than easy. So I remember oftentimes keeping my head down, that was the way to get through it. And thinking back now about the times that I could have stood up, should have intervened, that still kind of troubles me to this day because I got away pretty easy. You know, I had a good sense of humor, knew how to, you know, kind of dodge the bullet by making people laugh, etc. Other people weren't that lucky. So now as an adult working in the mental health field, we see kid after kid after kid coming to us with depression, with anxiety, who are self-injuring, who are suicidal, who are being bullied at school, who are being bullied at home, whose parents are terribly abusive, and who are being bullied by themselves. I think Ronnie talked to this about who, you know, they have no love for themselves, that they, you know, would rather take a razor blade to themselves than look at themselves in the mirror. I consider myself blessed to have found my career path to a place where I can do that type of work and you know, not just be punching a card. But it's tireless because there's not enough people to do that work. There's not enough hours in the day to help all of those kids. So by channeling your effort towards prevention, you get way more bang for your buck. You know, an ounce of prevention, a pound of cure, or something like that. So I think efforts like this are really, really important to stop the problem before it starts. So I'm glad to be here.
My name is Andrew Groma. I think it's very interesting that I'm following Joe because I feel like I am one of those kids. I am 20, but I'm pretty young. So, I mean, not that you guys are old, but I mean, I can't even drink legally. So, I mean, the thing is, I came out as transgender about 2 years ago. I lived a lie for 18 years of my life, and I was bullied and harassed, and I, like, you know, Ronnie and Joe had said, I bullied myself. I still bully myself. I've been hospitalized inpatient over 15 times in the matter of 3 years, most of those stays being about 2 weeks, which is long for an inpatient hospitalization. For those of you who don't know, they usually last about 3 to 5 days. I've been on multiple kinds of medications, and a lot of this isn't just because I have, you know, bipolar or depression or anxiety. A lot of this is because I can't. Now, my newest diagnosis is borderline personality disorder, which makes a lot of sense because that's when you can't accept to love yourself. And that's something I can't do. Because of the stigma that's been put out there with being transgender or gay or lesbian or bi or whatever the case may be, let alone just a dorky kid in society, you know, it's hard to be able to move on day by day. I've self-injured, I've had 2 suicide attempts, and this is all just in the past couple of years, and I've been through it all, I feel, and you know, life has not been the easiest, from parents bullying each other in my house. You know, my mom always said, oh, your dad bullied me, and he forced me into some to them getting a divorce, to dealing through my mom's cancer, my dad not being by her side, and then just the daily struggles of life in school and in work, and kids from my own community coming up to other kids from the community saying, you know, I don't really think Andrew's trans. When he goes on testosterone, which I already was at the time, when he goes on testosterone, he's either going to kill somebody or kill himself. And for me to hear that from someone who's in the LGBT community just really hurts. So I think overall bullying, for whatever reason, needs to end, and it needs to be considered that this is not something that, you know, just the average kid gets, or, oh, it's okay, they'll grow out of it, because it's really not.
Hi, I'm Chris Hill. I'm a Chicago public school teacher. I'm from Champaign, Illinois, which is a couple hours south, and I actually grew up in a small town called Whiteheath of about 500 people, and was a gay male growing up in rural Illinois, so I have my other box to be checked and to be, you know, the reasons that you can be bullied, and I think it's always easiest to bully someone that's different. And I would say I was lucky. I have an amazing family, awesome group of friends, but kind of listening to everybody, I think my defense mechanism growing up, whenever I realized in middle school when you start getting teased for, oh, if maybe you were being a little girly, or start being called a fag, or this and that, I think early I just learned to just blend in and be that social chameleon. So I went through all my teen years using drugs, alcohol, just basically trying to numb out and kind of avoid coming to terms with loving myself or figuring out who I really was, because it was easier just to put that off. And I'm also now, like I said, a teacher, so I teach art on the south side. So it's really important for me to come here and join in this really important conversation in terms of how can we build creative solutions instead of just martyring, oh, it's who are the bullies and we need to find them and we need to punish them. I really like how the Friend Movement's kind of targeting, well, how can we go a different route? How can we model how do you be a good friend, or what does that look like? How do you teach somebody young that you don't have to be friends with everybody that looks just like you and that just does the same things as you? And so it's interesting for me, and as an artist also looking at how you can engage youth and community, and how you can use art not only to heal from past experiences, but also to raise awareness, like what's going on with the walk and with the ribbons and all this really exciting stuff that's going on. But yeah, that's why I'm here. So I'm excited to take part.
My name is Julius Bautista, and I myself am also an artist. And my role as an artist, I believe, is to communicate and express my own experiences, and to share that the expression of my art is to embrace and love all things that are diverse. And I think that sort of promotion, that promotion of friendship, of love, of universal joy, that's essentially what the Friend Movement is aiming to do, as I interpret. And I like Joe's interpretation of suggesting that the best measure of ending bullying may be to seek means of prevention, because it's not an aggressive behavior. It's not some sort of behavior that fosters more bullying. I think one of the most difficult results of bullying is that negative behavior as a very aggressive type of display of dominance. It fosters that same sort of negative behavior. I know myself, having been bullied so much as a child, I get upset when I catch myself sort of bullying others or bullying friends, snapping, being in a bad mood. And it's that sort of stuff that I want to put an end to. I'm currently working on a new project with my art where I am interviewing my subjects, going through a sort of art therapy with them, and experiencing with them an exploration of their own past, how they were bullied and how they have healed. And so I like to try and utilize my art to share my experiences and have others go through similar sort of revelations.
Great, thank you to each of you for sharing your introductions. I'd like to ask our second question, which is, how would you define bullying? And have you ever been a victim of bullying yourself? And if so, please describe the situation in whatever way you feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be in an orderly fashion, whoever wants to share.
Well, myself, you think back on things that you've gone through in life and you don't realize how much of an effect it's had on you when you're as an adult, and you have to reflect back on things. It's kind of overwhelming. But I know for myself, as far as bullying in school, I went to a predominantly white school. There were 5 African Americans in the entire school. And I'm 51, so this is in the time when Roots was real big. Alex Haley and Roots was out, and I remember I was really teased by this one kid named Randy Weber, and how you remember those things. You know, I think he was a senior at the time, and I was a freshman, and I remember being called Kunta Kinte almost daily, and it went from Kunta Kinte to being called nigger. And I think a lot of kids thought it was okay because my father used the word a lot in his comedy routines. But to me, that wasn't okay. And to me, it never has been and never will be. But I went through a period with that, and being called that, and actually getting in fights because of it, and never seeing the people around you stand up and be there for you that you thought were your friends. Being called Jungle Bunny, and going home and asking what that meant because you had never heard it, you didn't know what it was. And then learning through time and dealing with it that you would start being the class clown because it got you out of being picked on. And you weren't laughed at. You would just tell a joke and people would laugh at that. Coming to my sexuality and learning who I was but not really knowing and still denying it a bit, but going to areas where you knew the gay people met and being gay bashed. A group of us being, guys pulling up in cars and getting out with bats and just beating on us. And then having to go home and trying to explain that without saying what you were doing because you were too afraid to let your parents know that you were gay. So you had no out. There was no way about. So my out was trying to kill myself. And knowing that and thinking that you have no answers and that you can't talk to anybody. There's no one you can talk to. Who can you talk to? You can't, in my community, I couldn't go and tell the church because it was so preached against. So I had nowhere there. You watched how you weren't embraced if you were of that lifestyle. You could see the church embracing a drug addict or a prostitute, but someone who was gay, they weren't going to embrace them. Your own household, you didn't think you were going to be embraced because it was always taught that how wrong it was. And at school, the same way. The teachers didn't discuss it. It was a thing that you kept hidden. So your way out was to try to end your life. And then how do you end your life and you're trying to end your life and then you can't explain when you come out of it and you don't succeed in it? How do you explain why you did what you did? So then you start making things up of why you did what you did. That it was just too much stress at school that, you can say you're getting picked on, but not because you're gay. And it's taken me years. Like I said, I'm 51 now. It's taken me till I was in my 40s to be comfortable with myself and to know who I was and to be able to freely say I'm gay and not to worry about what other people think and how people make you feel. People can't determine how I'm going to feel. And that's what I want to get out. And that's what bullying is.
Thank you for sharing.
I think it's important to know too, that bullying is really anything that makes someone feel less than what they should. And I don't think bullies are always aware that they're even bullying. And one of the stories, and I've told this story in several other places before. When I was in high school, again, a Catholic school, and we had to take a speech class. And, at the time, that was horrifying to me, because again, I was all about blending in. And I remember a guy, Scott, getting up and giving a speech, and this was in the 80s. It was kind of at the peak of the AIDS frenzy. And the purpose of this speech was to write a commercial. We had to create a product and pick it up and sell it, like as seen on TV type of things. And his product was Gay Away. It was the spray that you could use to, spray on yourself to keep gay people away. And I was very, very closeted at the time, but I remember sitting there just terrified, absolutely terrified that somehow everyone in that room knew that I was gay and that they would come after me. And it was probably because they didn't talk about being gay. It was Catholic. We just didn't speak of it, as opposed to now, which apparently they're all about speaking about. And it was also one of the highest points, because when the person was done with the speech, the teacher, who was the director of the theater program at the high school, got up and said, "You fail, and that's unacceptable. I come from the theater. We don't treat people that way in the theater, and that is absolutely disrespectful. Go down to the theater office, or the principal's office." And it was the first time ever that I'd ever heard anyone stand up for someone being gay, and it was incredible. And I still am friends with that woman now, and every year I make sure at one point to reach out to her and let her know the type of work that I'm doing and that I'm still impacting people. So I kind of strayed from the question, I think, a little bit. But, so I think bullying is lots of different things. It's not just that mean, directed attack. It's ignorance. It's speaking without knowing. But, these simple opportunities that we all have as adults to intervene can really make a tremendous difference in the lives of many.
I'll add one. So I think bullying occurs at all sorts of places and times, and it isn't just when you're 6 and queer or 6 and adorable. I think it can happen when we're 52 and a vice president. It can happen when we're 18 and in a Catholic college. Catholic women's college is brilliant. It can happen almost anywhere, and when I like what you said, it's ignorance oftentimes. I think bullying for me, I would define it again as there's almost this power brokering, that there's an intent to put someone down or be greater than someone else. I went to a Catholic women's college, which does not exist anymore, and I was a leader in high school, kind of a nerd, probably would still be called a nerd. And I remember running for student government. And I was a lesbian. People knew it. What the hell? And I can remember, to my face, people were kind. But one of the things that I found amazingly distressing was that when you were running for student government, you had to put posters up and tell people why you were running and all sorts of things. And I can remember the poster that I put on my floor. This is my sophomore year in college. And someone had written the word dyke on it, D-I-K-E, which I found really adorable. But the point is that dyke was written on that, and it was written on all of my posters. It didn't matter where. It was sort of like this, if anyone knows me, I'm incredibly extroverted and productive, so I think I did like 50 posters. And all of them had this word written on it, and it was misspelled. And at first I was, these are people I thought I knew, and was really kind of distressed about it. And then I thought, well, I'm really pissed off. I'm so beyond belief pissed off. I'm in a Catholic women's college where we're preaching love and respect, and there's all of these values related to Christ in our lives. I remember ripping one of the posters down because I found out who did it, and standing outside of her dorm room, yelling at her, going, "Christ's sake, if you're going to spell dyke, spell it the right way, you moron. It's D-Y-K-E, and I'm pretty damn proud of being one. Fuck you." And I remember my friends who were all Catholic girls, friends, a little appalled that I would take such a vocal position. But I think it was like, you know, I literally can remember thinking, and the woman whose name totally escapes me, but she was going to be like a school teacher. And if she couldn't even spell dyke right, what was she doing teaching? You know, and I think that was part of my perspective, was like, oh my God, this is who's threatening me. One, we don't want her teaching anyone because she can't spell. And two, she's dumber than I am. Oh Lord, I'm going to be quite fine. But the fact that I yelled and cursed in the hallway of this Catholic women's college led to there having to be a group meeting at the end of the week. And in that group meeting, it was set up something similar to this, facing the lake. I had to sort of get up and explain why I was so upset. And so it's kind of like, by then I'm laughing because she couldn't spell dyke right, and so I had to correct it. But here's what I learned about that. It would have been what I learned about that I keep applying in my life today. I could have hidden and created all brand new posters again and put them up. I didn't. I left the dyke posters up. By the way, I did quite well. And by the time I graduated from college, I was the president of the entire student government, so screw her. I wouldn't. And that was probably the problem. But, and it's funny to think any of us who've been bullied, and this is just I'm a 20-year-old and I was being bullied. I was bullied as a kid. I developed a sense of humor, which you're seeing now. This was my defense mechanism. It remains my defense mechanism. But here's the other thing that I would tell young people, if you know, and I'm in higher ed, so they couldn't take my intelligence away from me. And damn it all if I couldn't use it against them, or in this case, her. They couldn't take my faith away from me. Because they tried, and in this large group gathering, I actually had another woman stand up and say, "Get thee away from me, Satan." I mean, literally, to my face, "Get thee away from me, Satan," because I was obviously the devil, and you know, queer and Catholicism just doesn't always match. So I had to then listen to her friends basically say that I was committing grievous sins and I was just spreading. This was during the time of the Catholic Charismatic movement. Which was kind of an interesting time in my life. I didn't become a Catholic Charismatic. But it was just all about 6 of these women confronting beef. And you know what I learned? That as long as I can stand up and speak, it didn't matter if there were 6 of them, 20 of them, 100 of them. You know, I could sit there and say, I am who I am and screw you. You know, this is who I am. And I think it's because I've also, as I said earlier, I've been blessed by great friends, positive family. And as I was saying about bullying occurring at all phases, a couple of days ago, this gentleman at the university stood up, and I oversee a small area of the university. And in front of about 100 of our colleagues, he started ranting and raving about the things that my staff weren't doing and that they were incompetent. You know, just he felt that he could say these things in front of everybody. And as I'm sitting there listening to him going, I'm going to have to kill you. But I didn't do that. I listened to him, and this was a forum of which was a public town hall kind of thing, and I waited for somebody else to give him an answer. And the answer was basically sort of like, well, thank you for your comments, you know, we keep trying to do better. And I thought for about 2 minutes, and I went, that guy's bullying us. If you know, he's using a public forum to speak horribly about people who work here. And so I stood up and I said, I'm the proud vice president for institutional advancement. You're talking about my people. They do really good work. And I sort of slayed him verbally. But the point of it for me was, out of my own personal sense of integrity, I cannot tolerate when people are publicly negative or destructive. Hate is hate. And it just comes in so many different ways. But what I will tell you about my childhood, when I remember what I would probably call her dyke now, try to hit me and tell me what to do. The thing that I have found throughout this process is you need somebody to stick up for you when you, and I had an older brother and sister, so they trash people around for me. But when I got to a place where I couldn't stick up, they weren't there to do it for me anymore, I just became this raving lunatic about, I'm fed up with this, and you're not going to be able to do this. And I've also, by the way, for fun and entertaining, have done community organizing, because damn it all, democracy is democracy, and we can't let other people tell us what to do, unless it's my wife. And then she gets away with being able to do that. But bullying occurs all over the place. And we are such incredibly tolerant and pacifist people. Because as queer folks or transgender folk, we're so used to hiding that it's like one of the last things you want to do is stand up and say, hello, yes, I'm different. But by God, if more people would do that, I think life would change. I'm on a soapbox here, people.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
Just maybe a quick comment. I think it's amazing to me how within even the LGBT community, we have, for example, Boys Town, a lot of sort of self-loathing and self-hatred that shows itself through gays bullying other gays. And it's kind of ironic that because we're so used to being bullied, these sort of behaviors develop where we negatively stigmatize sexuality when we should be proud of it. We should be standing up and being proud of who we are and overcoming a lot of the challenges we have overcome. So I think in addition to what we've been saying about bullying taking on multiple forms, bullying can take on forms within even a strong community of people who should know better.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Okay, so my third question is, if you were bullied, what were some of the negative long-term effects that you suffered, and how did you overcome them? And again, this is if you're comfortable sharing.
I can answer that. Negative long-term effects, I mean, like I said before, I do have mental illness diagnoses, but then again, at the same time, what's really one doctor's opinion is versus another doctor's opinion. I've had a couple different psychiatrists in the past couple of years just because of getting older and having to get one that's not an adolescent one and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's a doctor's opinion. They've all had different ones, and I think that a lot of my self-hatred comes from people hating themselves, directing that anger towards me. I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of bullying in my family. My dad is not very accepting of me at this time. He claims there is no problem with me being transgender, but he thinks that I'm not mature enough to make this life decision. So my question of, he bullies my mom about it a lot. He won't do this so much anymore, but at a point he would, and my birth name is Lauren, and I know probably you're all thinking, you look like a Lauren, well, I get that a lot. But, my mom would address me as Andrew to my dad, and he'd be like, Andrew, who's Andrew? I don't know what Andrew. And she'd be like, oh my God, shut up, you do. And it got to a point where it got so out of control that she said, listen, you talk to me like that again, not acknowledging that we have a son, then the conversation is done for the day, and we can try again tomorrow. And I think that's like a really good step. My mom has been one of my biggest advocates since day one. When I was 5, I don't remember this obviously, because I'm sure a lot of you don't remember what happened when you were 5 either. But apparently my mom said to my dad, she goes, Jeff, I think we have a gay daughter. She's either gay or trans. I don't know which one, but we're gonna find out someday. And apparently she was right. So, I mean, it's been a long-term effect of that, unfortunately, not just being bullied to myself, but having people being bullied around me and my family. I mean, I don't see, my mom always says to me, you know, is this how you're gonna, I kind of, what my dad has demonstrated to my parent, to my mom and to my sister, sometimes kind of comes on to me, and I have a difficult time in some situations where, you know, I treat my mother with disrespect, and I'm not gonna lie, I do it a lot, and that's not a good thing, but that's how I was kind of raised, to not really respect my parents. They didn't really respect me, and that's a problem. And now it's kind of gotten to a point where it's like, well, my mom says, is that how you're gonna treat your spouse someday? And I go, oh wait, you're right, why would I treat someone that I love that way when I love you as well? And I treat you, when I wish I could treat you with the uttermost respect, but I'm just not at a point where I can do that right now. And it's kind of upsetting to me when I think about it, and I kind of wish my mom was here tonight, because I do love her, and I don't think she sees that enough. And I think, you know, we all make regrets, and we make mistakes when we're younger, especially at this weird age between 18 and 21, and you're trying to find yourself and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, I still can't find myself, and it's becoming a real problem, and I have a hard time now standing up for what I believe in, and this is actually one of the first things that I am standing up for, I feel. You know, that's definitely a long-term effect that maybe some of you don't see as a problem, but I think it is a problem, because I can't stand up for myself, and this is a good way to start, but, you know, I need to stand up for myself in my own home. And with a lot of the hospitalizations, I have told my dad that, well, you know, we're not going to talk anymore. And it's gotten to a point where I feel like that's a stance I should take until he can respect me. But at the same time, I think, well, he's got the season tickets for the Blackhawks. I mean, who am I kidding? I want to go to that game. So maybe we won't talk for a couple of days, but eventually I want to go with him to the game. So, I mean, there's a done deal right there. So it's very difficult, because I want to stand up for what I believe in and stuff to my father, but I know at the end of the day he has a good heart. Every parent copes with it differently, and everyone in this room would cope with it differently if you were my parent or if you were just my friend off the street. You know, everyone deals with things in a different way, and this is just the course that I've had to accept that my dad has to take. And unfortunately, it's not fair to me, it's not fair to my sister. She has to live like 3 different lives, because I never came out in high school, which was really unfortunate with the long-term effects of, you know, now my sister is this big hot shot in the band, where I was once in band, and she's like, everyone goes like, oh wait, you're the one who has a transgender brother, right? And that's like not fair to her. Why is there really a label put on her when she has really nothing to do with me other than we're blood related? I mean, that's not, bullying is now affecting her to a sense that kids come up to her and it's like awkward, because it's like, well, what am I supposed to say? You know, she's only 17, I think, and she's just 17. But it's like, it's not fair to her to have to go through this as well. You know, she lives a life at school like that. She lives a life with my mom where it's always Andrew, and Andrew's in the hospital. Andrew ruins all my life because he's always, you know, in the hospital or committing suicide somehow, or trying to, or self-injuring. When is he going to end up in the hospital next? And then I'm kind of bullying her in a sense because she doesn't get the attention she deserves half the time. And then my dad lives another life where it's like, oh, that's Lauren, that's your sister, it's not fair to her. So I mean, that's kind of how it's been a long-term effect for me, because it's not only just the outside world, it's my family, and that's the people I love most. And I mean, if your family doesn't accept you, then it's like, well, you have no one. That's how I feel, at least.
Good. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I think it's funny because you said you were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, I was myself diagnosed with the same thing, except I think my experiences are very different from Andrew's. I think long-term effects for me are, they show in the ways that it's actually quite difficult to explain, but I feel a sort of disconnect with people. You could see me at a gathering, at an event, at work. I'll have a smile on my face, I'll be social, I'll be polite, I'll be whatever. I can be funny, I can be laughing, I can have a great time, but there's this sort of like chronic, sort of ongoing depression or anxiety that I just can never really get rid of, and it's just always there. So it's, I think, a result of, years and years worth of childhood bullying and feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not good enough. And it's a double-edged sword. Even though it's difficult to live with, it's also what drives me to want to succeed, to want to better myself, to be a stronger person, and to share those experiences with others. So I want to just bring it to the point where I could sort of look at it as something that I can control. I may have been bullied, I may have been discriminated against and given a lot of prejudice for several years of my life, but I think I want to share the message that we all have the power to turn things around and learn from the mistakes of others and our own experiences, that there are better ways, better alternatives to dealing with things and dealing with other people.
Good, thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
You know what, I was thinking about what Melva said about it, bullying happening at any age, and how we react to it. And and it's dawned on me that bullying is happening now. That oddly, in terms of timing, my husband, sitting right here in the front row, hi honey, is a teacher, and he's a damn good teacher. And he's an advocate for youth. He volunteers for Pride Youth, and has really spent a lot of time working to help build up kids. And last week, when he was leaving school, there was a note on his windshield that said, "Homosexuals like you have no business working with children or adolescents. You should resign." And what, it's beyond bullying, it's harassment. But the response from both of us was terrible sadness and rage. More rage from me, that's kind of my go-to. And we're still dealing with it. And thankfully, his school and the police, this is out in the suburbs where we don't know what will happen. And they're treating it very seriously as a felony hate crime, which is awesome. Because I hope they catch the SOB who did it. But you don't think of that as bullying. Bullying is something that happens to kids, but it's not. That's just as much bullying as anything else.
Good, thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share? Okay, my next question is regards to cyberbullying, and I'm just curious what experiences, if any, have you or someone you know had with cyberbullying, and what were the effects?
With me, I had an instance where there's a website called Media Takeout, and I was at a party at the time named Brian, and someone told me to send a message. What's the saying? No news is good news, or whatever the news is, no matter what it is, which type of publicity is good. So I'm like, wonder what this is, and I go to the Media Takeout, and they have pictures of Brian and I, and we're like embraced and different things like that. And these pictures are pictures that were taken from my Facebook page. And then they also have pictures of me as a female impersonator. And the pictures of me as a female impersonator were pictures of me from a movie role. But the caption on the thing said, Richard Pryor's son is gay, and he's also a transvestite. And then if you went down to the comments where the people were commenting, they were blaming me for my father's death. And it was like over and over and over and over again. We see why his dad died, how his dad is ashamed, and so I know what what it's like as far as the cyber things. And then my best friend, who was also gay, who I thought was my best friend, a few years prior to that, actually outed me to the world. He sold pictures of me to the National Choir and the Globe and all that stuff. And this is somebody within your own community, someone you think that's close to you, someone that you know, could actually do that. The repercussions of that was more so with my family. It affected my mother. My sister had to change schools because she was bullied because of it. So I know I get the cyberbullying.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? Anyone else have experiences with cyberbullying?
I haven't experienced it firsthand, but I mean, I've read about the horror stories. I'm sure some of you have heard about the instance of that girl who drank the bleach, or the one that ate tampon, or Rebecca Black is probably a better example. After that video that she released, that music video, Friday, you can't even go to school without being bullied and made fun of. And it's unfortunate because, you know, you're in your home and you're online and you're supposed to be in this safe haven where you feel comfortable. But I think cyberbullying is this really ugly thing. You have like this new sort of animosity where people feel like they can just say the most disgusting and terrible of things because they're hiding behind a monitor. And there's this faceless entity. And so it's a whole different field. And it's awful that there's really no way to control that, but outside of trying to prevent it by promoting positive behavior, what we're trying to do here. So.
Yeah, and in the clinical work that I do, you know, we see a tremendous amount of cyberbullying, younger and younger. You know, that it seems more of a junior high issue at this point, even than a high school issue or a college issue. And there's no safety net. There's, you know, you can, you know, email Facebook, and, you know, maybe someone somewhere, you know, 3 weeks from now will read that email. But ultimately, there's not. Some jurisdictions have police officers who will step in and monitor, but many don't. And the problem that you have with cyberbullying as opposed to real-life bullying, I don't know what the alternative is, but there are bystanders in life that you could turn to and say, "I need help, help." You can't turn to someone in the cyber world because there's no one there, you know, and you don't see a face. You can't make eye contact with someone and kind of implore help. So it's a very isolated, lonely experience that these kids are experiencing when they're getting bullied online.
Thank you. Oh, sure.
I want to share my cyberbullying story. I think, you know, even kids aren't immune to it. I think even adults are really immune, are targets, especially when you put your stuff out there. About 2 years ago, I was putting together a project to go and interview teens to really kind of understand what's happening outside of these bubbles we live in, LA, New York, Chicago. So, you know, I spent months and months and months to solidify it, put it together, work with organizations, and for some reason, someone decided to write this huge thing about me. And they wrote, "Elliot's a fraud, he's a fake, you know, what is he doing?" You know, and you have no idea how bad that impacted myself. Like, I lost all my confidence. I lost half my sponsorship. I lost half the teens I was going to interview. All because something that was not even tangible, I couldn't even see it, decided to write something about me. And honestly, like that put me down for almost 2 years. I finally bounced back because you're constantly trying to prove yourself now. But I remember when I met with Ronnie, and after a couple meetings, we sat down at Starbucks in WeHo. And I was like almost to tears, saying, "Do you really want to take a chance on me? Like you know, I'm a laughingstock right now, you know, because of some article written about me that I had no control over." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take a chance on you." But people don't understand what's the rippling effect of cyberbullying. You know, I worked 10 years. 10 years. It took one article for me to lose all my accreditation, everything, and I've had to rebuild it and really, really be even extra precautious. Every dollar we spend, it's on a spreadsheet, everything we do. And, you know, just even lately, you know, Ronnie and I, we're attacked as well.
Every day.
Every day. But, you you know, when I talk with kids, it's so interesting to see how they are. No longer can you put this tangible person out that's bullied you, it's somebody you don't even know. And these kids, they can't handle it. It's much worse than it was for us.
Well, it's happening online, as you mentioned earlier. It's happening, you know, from behind the computer. And these kids are cyberbullying each other, they're texting each other, and then they're sitting in the classroom.
And they won't even look at each other.
And they don't even look at each other. It's almost silent, you know. And, you know, when you and I were being bullied, we didn't have the cyber bullying. You know, we didn't have to go through that exponential.
How do you handle it when someone outs you, calls you a faggot? Like, someone calls me a faggot on the bus, 10 people hear it, then it's like a chain of events. But, you know, now someone calls you a faggot, and or whatever, and it can be recorded, Twittered, Facebook, and how does a teen handle, like, that mass, like, overwhelming sensation of, like, not 5, 10 people, like thousands of people? Like, how do you do that? And I think that's why it's so important for us to teach people, our whole campaign, the new F word, I'm sure some of you have seen it. It's people are flipping the camera off. Have you guys seen it yet? And people are like, oh, that's distasteful, blah, blah, blah. And what we have to say is, I always say, you have to look at this photograph like you did in the 80s. Don't look at this photo like a news feed. Look at it as a piece of art, take your time and look at it. And it's all about that inner monologue. And our whole thing is, if someone says something bad to you, we want you in your head to say, fuck you, I'm incredible. Fuck you, I'm amazing, I'm worthy. And if we can teach people, and we don't have to use fuck you, but if we can teach them inside to be like, I'm good, say whatever you want, we feel like we've done a good job.
Yeah, it just goes back to self-power, you know, taking back your power and not giving it away to people. And just to finish up on our cyberbullying, you know, we're bullied every single day online. We've had death threats just for trying to do the work that we're doing in the community. And I'm not gonna lie, it's scary. It's hurtful when you're trying to build something special, when you're trying to follow your dream and share that dream with others.
And I have to get him to calm down, because like he gets very, very emotionally upset. And I tell him, and the one thing about cyberbullying, which I really think we do maybe need, you can rephrase it from my thing, but it's a pissing contest. It really is. Someone says something, then you say it back, and you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it just turns into this giant pissing contest. And it's hard to see Ronnie, because Ronnie gets so upset, and he gets so emotional, and I hate it, breaks my heart. I won't read him. It breaks my heart. And, you know, it's the way right now, and we have to figure out how do we navigate and how do we educate.
And it's, you know, I want to hand it back over to the panel, but it's why we're here tonight, because we don't have the answers at Friend Movement, but we feel that sitting in a room like this with you guys, we can help kind of find those answers. And, you know, towards the end of this program too, we're going to ask you to, you know, offer your questions to this incredible panel. So let's get back to the
Sorry, I
panel.
didn't mean to hijack.
Thank you. It's a good hijacking. And I think also just to add on, with the cyberbullying, you never know where the information is going to end up, being that it has such a wide reach, and you don't know how long it's going to stay online.